You guys are chatting. Hi, welcome to my writing channel. My name is Josie, and over the next couple days while we're doing this canoe trip, I'm hoping to get some writing done on a new project. I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I was like going back and forth between a couple of ideas for a while because I've been writing thrillers for a while now and I knew I wanted to do something different. So that left me with two options of projects and stories that I'd been thinking about for a while and I was the most excited for. One was a romance book with set in like a low fantasy world, so in like the human world but with some fantastical elements, and the other was just a plain old epic fantasy that would potentially be like a pretty long series. They're very different vibes, they're very different stories, and I was honestly really leaning towards that romance. Like, I was gearing up, I was getting excited for it, but then I just had this flash of an idea for the epic fantasy book, and I can't help but now want to do that. So I think that's what we're gonna brainstorm on this trip. I still have a little ways before I want to do a full outline, and I really want to see this flash of an idea, expand on it, see how it could influence my character's environment and as well my character themselves and their goals and what they're going to have to try and navigate. The plan's going to be to brainstorm, to write down all of my ideas, whether they're plot points, scenes, dialogue, anything, so that way I have a lot to work with when it comes to outlining. Figured I'd give you a quick tour of our campsite. So we just put the fly on. We just spent the last like couple hours napping with it off in the sun, and it was really nice, but it's starting to get really cold. But you can see behind it the lake we came in on. So we went over like 3 or 4 lakes today. I think it was 3. And then this is the campsite. There's a fire pit, but we didn't bring any firewood. There's Jonah playing his melodica. And then you could actually see our next lake right there. It's a little bit bigger than the one we came in on. And then when you go this way is the trail to get to both lakes, as well as an outhouse and a bear box. I honestly expected the lakes to be a lot bigger. Like, when I looked at the map, I think I'm used to bigger lakes. So we've been cruising, and we actually stopped earlier than I thought maybe we would because we were tired. So there is the outhouse. I don't even want to know what animal went after the bottom of that. And then here's the bear box. We brought our fishing rods in case we wanted to go fishing. So we have our little tackle box and our net there, our paddles. And then I think there's like another spot just past over there to set up another tent. There's supposed to be 3 sites here. And then this is the lake. And there's our canoe. But yeah, so there's a lot more portages just because there's much smaller lakes, so you hit them a lot more frequently. Another challenge of this trip was I'm trying to figure out how to use this tablet while doing outdoor activities, while camping, while hiking, because I want to be able to write while I'm doing those things instead of having to handwrite it, because that just doesn't work for me because it takes so long to type it up after. So I got this tablet that also has this connecting keyboard, and it's been just such a struggle because at first the case that I had for the tablet didn't fit that keyboard, and even now that it does connect, it doesn't even like connect that well. Like, I feel like it keeps popping out and then I lose the connection to it. Anyways, so that's me, just try my best to make it work. Whoa, second cast, got a fish. Oh, that's handy. Look at that. Hold him? No, because he's got teeth.
Oh, you can hold him like this. It's a pike.
Whoa.
Essex was having a fine time down in the west.
I feel like when I've been writing my thrillers, my boyfriend has been interested in them to the extent that he'll read them. He'll find some enjoyment of me talking about the plot and the characters. but he really loves fantasy, and I feel like he is honestly more excited about me writing this book than I am. And so it's been really nice because as I'm brainstorming a lot of these things, a lot of the world building, he actually ends up having some really good ideas and insights about where I can take it. So, based off of what we were talking about, he suggested we listen to this Revolutions podcast to try and get some inspiration for just trying to understand a lot better how a feudal system or a court really works. We've taken our first break of the day. I'm just hanging out because I'm just frustrated because we're fishing. Jono really wants to catch a fish because other than that one fish we caught yesterday, we haven't had any luck. But I keep hooking branches and trees, so I need to take a break. But it's kind of nice because, like, in these moments of like quiet, as you're paddling, as you're hanging out, as you're portaging between the lakes, like, it's such a perfect time to just like think about my story, to think about different connections. And I feel like when I'm back home, I'm always filling my time with stuff. Like, if I'm not actively writing, I'm actively listening to something, actively watching something. I don't give my brain a lot of time to do nothing, but it's moments when like my body's working, but like my brain is empty, that I feel like I get the best ideas and I think really deeply about stuff. So I've been brainstorming this fantasy series idea for a really long time, like for 5, 6, 7 years maybe, and slowly adding more and more layers. Like, at different times of my life, I'll think of different things, whether it's character related, whether it's place related, whether it's potentially like a religion that's in the story or a conflict or something. And I felt really good about it, but the issue becomes I've thought of so many things, not just for book one, but for all the books that come after it, that a part of me is like, how can I even start writing? Who knows if I have an idea for like another book down the line in the series, and I wish I would have introduced some sort of like foreshadowing in the first book, which I know is ridiculous. But I think this final bit of brainstorming that I've been doing in the last couple of days is what I need to finally get the confidence to write it. Because essentially, this first book has 3 different points of view. So there's 3 different characters that you're following. They all start at the same place, but then they like quickly all go to different places within, like the kingdom. I don't know my term for it yet, whether it's kingdom, country, whatever, but they all go to different places. One person goes to the capital or like the court. Another person goes into a ongoing conflict with war, and then a third person goes to just like this jungle area. But they're all within the same kingdom or area under the same rule, and I really wanted you to feel the interconnectedness, even though their storylines and their locations are just so different. And I've thought about little things, but I've really sat down and figured out what the king is doing. Like, because this is like a colonized land, and the empire that came and colonized it is still like building up, their resource streams and stuff from exploiting the different things available to them in this place. And I feel like I finally really starting to flesh it out. It's really helped listening to this Revolution podcast that is going through the different steps of the first English Civil War and all the things that led to that. Not that I'm really following it very much, but it just makes me think about the different political issues that could be going on, the different tensions. So I'm not going to be spoiling a lot, and I don't think this is a lot of spoiler because the brainstorming I'm doing right now isn't even about like the main character's character arcs. It's just like the backdrop almost. And it'll have implications, of course, like later on in later books too. But essentially, like 20 years before the main narrative starts, there's a prologue that happens that 20 years ago. But there was an old king that was kind of like the figurehead for the empire in this like colonized location, and he gets removed and a new king comes into play, and there's reasons for that. But this new king now has this pressure of trying to succeed where his predecessor didn't. And so at this time, because he has different conflicts and wars going on, it's costing a lot of money. Basically all this brainstorming is around how is he raising money to afford to do all of these things. So the primary way is taxes, obviously, but more than that, it's like he's trying to establish like a new colony, a new place for his people to gain wealth and prosperity. So what I have so far is he's like renting out parcels of land to people, as like he's renting them, where they have to issue him a certain amount of tax. So they have to be the ones in charge of actually like exploiting the resources, which means that there's like also going to be like different pressures of exploitation in different locations for different native groups because of who's in charge. And then I'm also considering adding like monopolies. So he's issuing monopolies for certain merchants, which has implications then for the people who rule that land and pay rent, because they're then potentially going to be excluded from specific resources if there's a Anyways, so there's all these like different ideas that I'm coming up with, and then the actual implications of those rules, because they're established across the whole land, I think will make it feel a lot more uniform when going between the 3 points of view. And so a lot of what I'm doing now that I've like started to establish more of what I want of like the overarching rules of what the king is doing is really figuring out ways and pockets of how it'll implicate the different characters, how it'll show up. Because as well, like none of these the main characters are the king. None of them are the royal family. None of them is someone who would just be hanging out in like where all the decision making's happening. But essentially I'm trying to make it so that the reader gets an understanding of what's going on by the overlap of what's happening in all 3 places without actually getting told anything, because that wouldn't make sense, because there's like no way to do that without being like, let's sit down and have this exposition, or have a character find out information that they like really shouldn't be privy to. So that's where I'm at right now, and so far things are going pretty good. I spent a decent amount of time yesterday just typing out like the logic of a little bit like the history, like in paragraph form of, the old king was here, he did this is why he got usurped, this is why the empire let that happen. Then the new king came in, and these are the new pressures, and this is what he's doing first, this is what he's doing next, here are the cause and effects. So in the book, I imagine only little pieces of it will actually be told, but I just need to know the full story for myself, I think, to really understand like what's going on. Oh, you think you're ready to keep paddling? We're going to try and do some more writing on the tablet. But yesterday I was successful a little bit, but it was really hard, and I think it's because my lap is not stable. So I was debating using something flat, like maybe my cutting board will be good enough. But as you can see, it actually did end up breaking a little bit. You can see that? But this has to connect up really with this. And then any movement, and it like disconnects. Okay. Nope, it's not working. Shoot. Still not working. Oh wait. Yeah. Okay, yeah, we're good. You can see Jonah is making a fire for us. There was even some firewood left over in the fire pit, so we can actually do that tonight. It was too heavy for us to want to bring any, but good news, I'm feeling really good about the brainstorming I've done surrounding the taxation system of this world. But it opened up a new can of worms. So basically what I did was, after going through and establishing what the legal kind of rules were, what the king implemented, I did a point form list of how it impacted each of our 3 point of view characters. So talking about different scenes that might include, hints of what's going on, this greater conflict. I even wrote some dialogue out for some parts of it. But I got stuck on the point of view that included the guy who's in the war. or that conflict, that, fighting between the two groups. Not because of the taxation issue, but because I came up with a new issue. So basically what's happening there, and this isn't really spoilers because this is like the basis for that whole like plot for that one character, but the king needs a specific resource from this region, and the group that's living there basically just don't want to cooperate. So they've had this very long extended war with the king, and it's one of the reasons why the king is losing money, because he's investing so much time and energy into trying to win this. But basically, I need to find a way that a smaller group of people can be withstanding a much larger force that's able to be replenished from other unfortunate people that get roped in from other places in the empire. I think what I'm leaning towards is having that smaller group have an advantage, maybe through using, like, I don't know if I would use horses. I don't know if I want to make it quite as like this world as that, but some sort of steed, right? Like they are whatever, 500 of them on this specific animal, and that gives them a tactical advantage because maybe, in this land there aren't horses, and they have these special animals that the other part of the empire doesn't have access to, and they can't really control if they are able to get one. But these animals are a limited source. So there's like whatever 500 at the beginning of the war, and slowly they have decreased over time. So that's kind of how they can tell that they're slowly winning and chipping away over time, is that they're able to remove these animals and they can't be replenished. Because as far as the empire and the king knows, there is no more animals where this comes from. I'm saying this kind of like very hand wavy because I also don't want to spoil why that is, because I have started to think about that. But this means that I'm going to have to also do more research into how that kind of dynamic plays out. Like I know that, for example, in history, like Genghis Khan was able to defeat huge like armies with a very small group of people because they had access to horses and because they had these really good tactics. And so I'm wondering if I can pull things from that, because I don't know a lot about war, to be honest. I don't know a lot about like battlefield tactics, and it's something that I really appreciate in fantasy books that I read. Because, for example, I love Steven Erikson's battlefield sequences. He wrote the Malazan series. So the first one is Gardens of the Moon. It's like 10 books. I read it a while ago, and those books there's a lot going on. But I just remember being completely amazed by the set pieces he created on the battlefield. And I want to at least like come close to doing that, because it's just incredible what you can do in books and fantasy books with battles, especially making them like very memorable. Like I want this sequence, this plot line, not to just be two groups meeting on a battlefield, but like actually have more, making each conflict really interesting, and feel that this battle could not have taken place in any other world but this one. But this has given me a lot to think about. I've literally just been sitting in my chair, like staring up into space, trying to think about how I'm gonna make this work. So thankfully I've got another full day tomorrow of canoeing, so it'll give me a lot of time to debate exactly how I want to do this. Isn't this nice?
I don't know yet. I'm not quite convinced.
while I probably still need to do a little bit of research using the internet, especially around like war or battlefield tactics, I feel like I'm close enough to start outlining soon without needing to know all the details, because I think what will happen is as I'm outlining and I know, for example, like a great battlefield tactic needs to be implemented here, I can at that point figure out what that tactic is. It's not like I need to know like a bunch of different examples going into it. And I also just feel like everything is starting to come together, because with these 3 different points of view, like they really are in 3 different areas doing 3 different things. And I've brainstormed a lot of them separately. And so I think thinking about this whole taxation system is really a way of starting to piece everything together. And then now that I'm really contemplating the implications of that system as well as the war in the South, it really is starting to feel like a bigger picture. Like instead of having these 3 disparate brainstorming ideas, I'm like filling in the gaps and the connections between everything. And it's been a little bit tougher because it's like an analogy is like a puzzle where you're putting in puzzle pieces, and in one place maybe you're working on the sky, in another place, I don't know, if it's a lakeside, you're working on the beach, maybe you're working on a boat because all those boat colors are the same. But then it's those in between, those murky bits that are like the hardest to place the pieces. And at least for me, since I'm like literally creating this vista, right, through this analogy, this vista with my brainstorming, figuring out how to fill in those gaps while maintaining the picture. I feel like I'm kind of losing it a little bit. But basically, as the gaps narrow, trying to figure out what fits there becomes harder based on the rules and the things I've already established. And I think at this point, I just kind of need to go for it. So I think I'm going to tonight sit down and really write everything else that I've come up with, because I haven't really written too much more in the last like day, which is good timing because tonight is our last night of camping, and then tomorrow we head home. So I'll definitely be excited to start outlining soon, but that's going to be a whole other issue. I'm just getting ready to go to sleep, and I don't know how I'm so tired, because honestly we haven't really been pushing ourselves that hard on this trip. Like it's really easy for people to do the entire loop we've done. I think it's like 8 miles in a full day. But I think that it's in part because we definitely overestimated the frequency of the portages. So our major weakness is that we have a lot of stuff that's hard to like pack down and carry, and also it's just heavy. So it makes the portages really tough, especially when the lakes are so small. Like it feels like we're doing more portaging than we are actual paddling, but it's okay. It's been beautiful, it's been fun. And it's been nice to also just like take our time, because I feel like so many times when I do trips like this, I'm always in such a rush to get to the next place, to like start at first light, to get to our spot where we want to camp, you know, at the end of the day, and feel like I've really pushed myself. But honestly, we've been like sleeping in, making pancakes in the morning, maybe going for a swim, picking berries along the way, you know, and we've even gotten to our campsite, you know, mid-afternoon most days, and then we spend time reading in front of the fire, fishing, whatever. I actually finished my book today, so that's why I think I'm gonna go to bed extra early, because I don't really have anything to do. And honestly, I don't think I want to do any more of this world building researching right now. I feel pretty set with what I want to do. But something I also want to bring up, kind of to conclude this like world building section, that yes, I've done it over the last 3 days, but I've also done it for like years leading up to this, you know, thinking about like the religion, the characters, their backstories, all of those things. So I don't want it to come across as I did the entire fantasy series or book brainstorming in like 3 days or 4 days or whatever. Because it really has been a lot more than that, and this has really just been tying all the pieces together. But one of the things that did stress me out was the idea of trying to fit all of the world building for an entire series all of the brainstorming for it before I even start the first book, because I want there to be hints. I love it when it happens where you get hints in the first book, things that come at the very end or things that come in between, you know, and it makes the world feel so much more lived in to see the like nuggets of information kind of strewn throughout all of the books. But I think there's also something to be said about giving yourself little clues, little things that you can build on later. Like, I don't need to know exactly how things are going to work, but I can allude to them enough to be vague enough that I'm not putting myself in a box, but not too much that I'm not setting up anything at all. So I think there will be a little bit of that too, where, you know, maybe they come across a character or some weird event that is not going to be fully explained, that is not critical to that specific plot line, but it's something that I can, you know, leave for later. So that's something else I'm thinking about. And I'm sure those will be like on the page decisions as I'm drafting the book itself. But for now, I'm going to go to bed. We'll wake up, do our pancakes, and then finish out the last couple of lakes and head home. This has been just a really nice trip, both for my own relaxation and peace of mind, and I feel so motivated to write this fantasy book. I feel like I've solved so many of the issues. There'll be more to come. Definitely, every time I solve one thing, there's always like 2 or 3 more new things that pop up that I have to deal with. But I really have in my brain, like, I have this full sense of the whole story, at least for the first book, and just like the world they're living in. And I feel ready, like I have the tools to outline this book.